The sport of off-road racing is full of incredible stories, wild characters, legends, and even villains. We cover it all on offroadracer.com, but there's only so much we can put down in an article. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, and that means sitting down with some of our industry's most influential characters and hitting record. Welcome to the Off-Road Racer podcast, a Mad Media production, made exclusively for offroadracer.com. Each month, we'll go beyond the dirt into the homes, shops, and lives of the most interesting and game-changing icons of our sport. You'll hear about their history, success, failure, and everything in between as we pull back the curtain and reveal the stories of their lives. I'm your host, Matt Martelli, and this is the Off-Road Racer podcast. I'm Matt Martelli. This is Off-Road Racer Podcast, and I'm here with Tommy Morris. What's up, Tommy?
Hey, just an old guy looking at a young guy.
Yeah, right. I'm not feeling very young. We've been on the road for, I think, 4 days now doing shoots. So we've driven all over Nevada, California, and a little piece of Arizona. So I'm a little tired, but it's all good. I'm glad you're here.
Well, my pleasure. And so I was texting you last night as I was coming back up from down by the border near El Centro. I knew you're up doing some podcast stuff up in Nevada or whatever it was you do important stuff there.
Yeah, we were up in Fallon actually doing a shoot with Phil Blurton for Vision Wheels. So it was really fun. We went over to the Sand Mountain area.
I've been there. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's pretty cool. Like it was a nice, like there's a nice dune right in the middle of the desert. So you're in a dune and then you're looking at desert. So you get multiple looks up there. So it was a lot of fun.
You go around it up to the top of the hill over the next valley also, or just stay in the dunes?
No, we went cruising all around. The Vegas to Reno course just touches over there. So we went over and jumped on some of that and went ripping around and had some fun with Phil. Phil's great. You know, I get to do these shoots with different athletes and, you know, a lot of them are unsure of what they're doing, but he has so much car control. When I ask him to do something, he's like, yeah, okay, cool. Was that good? Do you want me to do it faster or harder? I'm like, yeah, sure. So no, it was a lot of fun.
Neat facility. I've spent time up at Fallon at the Naval Weapons Station up there. They have a lot of, that's where they do the SEAL training up there for Groups 1 and Group 2. So I go up there for some training or vehicle development. So I know exactly what you're talking about as we ran a lot of different interesting vehicles through that area.
Well, you've been all over running interesting vehicles. You know, talk about, you know, the fact that you participated in a ton of development for different military vehicles, right?
Did more yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what the stuff you can talk about, of course, but what military vehicles have you had a hand in developing?
Pretty much everything that would be naval special warfare, SOCOM, FOSAVA, everything below MATVs, that type of stuff. MRAPs. I've driven those and done training in them, but everything from the training in the Flyer, the GMV 1.1, to the Land Cruiser 76, 79, the Hiluxes, their side-by-sides, previous version, the D2, D4, Polaris, M-Razors, and then done a bunch of work with the Alpha, also the latest generation.
And so when you do that, do they know your pedigree in off-road, or they're just like, hey, this is some old suspension guy?
It was a long haul. It's been 15 years, and it started actually when I was at Wide Open Baja, and some of it through a gentleman, Bill Weber, who he was one of the original guys in a very elite group that if anybody knows about the original SEAL groups, then Richard Marcinko, he was handpicked by Marcinko when they first formed way back when, what was called, what I can't say.
Right.
But worked with him and then got a call, what about this stuff? And they came down, wanted to see about do some training when we were down in Mexico, when they could still go down there some. And they said, you know anything about this little Tacoma or Hilux? I'm like, yeah. And it started from there. Met one guy, met some other guys, and next thing I knew, had some communication, but because of when I was working with Todd Clement at Wide Open Baja, there was just some confusion in contracting and whatnot, and I just said, I need a daytime job. I can help you guys. And then the economy hit in 2008, and so I called the engineering groups and guys I knew back there who I'd met and said, hey, I'm going to try my own thing at consulting. And so the next thing I know, I got a phone call say, put together a ROM, basically a quote for us for doing some training, and then that led to driving their vehicles, and that led to vehicle development. And so I'm very blessed now to be kind of a go-to guy for them for virtually every platform.
Well, they found the right guy.
I guess so. I'm like, don't worry, I managed to piss a lot of them off too, so it's all good.
Yeah. Well, actually, you mentioned something. There's two things you mentioned that I want to talk about. First, let's talk about Bill Weber, right? So I'll tell you how I met him, and it was pretty unique. He was still doing work for BF Goodrich at the time, and we were doing a UTV ride down there called Legends Rally, and some of the BFG people were going to come on the rally. And so, like, I had no idea who he was. You know, he calls me, he says, "Hey, I need to see your exit plan." And I'm thinking, like, my exit plan, my safety plan. And he goes, "No, your exit plan in case anything goes down." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." I hung up the phone and I looked at my brother and I'm like, "We need to create an exit plan for this ride we're doing, right?" We like Googled, well, what is an exit plan? And so we figured out it was like, if there's a problem, how do you get people out of the country, right? So we put our version of that together and hand it to Bill, and Bill goes, "You missed this and this, and put that in there, and we're good." And I'm thinking, like, we're just going on a UTV ride in Mexico, dude, right? So then he was a part of the ride, and I was running the whole thing, and some of the rooms got screwed up. So I said, "No problem." I go, "I'll give Bill my room." Well, later on that night, I discovered that the only other bed was in the room with Bill. So I said, "Hey, Bill, there was a mistake. Is it okay if I room with you?" He said, "Sure, right? No problem, right?" So we're having drinks and whatever, and Bill disappears, and I'm thinking, like, oh, no big deal. So I go back to my room, open the door, and there's Bill, buck naked, right?
I was wondering how far this would go, because that was one of the fun things when you roomed with Bill, kind of like, what's this streak across the room heading for the bathroom in the middle of the night?
Buck naked, I think he had a cigar in his hand, and he goes, "Oh, hey," and it was like, oh. But no, what a classic man, and the bummer that he's gone now. And he was really fun to hang out. I got to know him a little bit after that.
He was a lot of fun and very helpful in understanding the military side of it. Because if you did any tours with him like that in Mexico, Wide Open Baja, that type of thing, I met him through Ryan Thomas.
Yeah.
Because Bill had married Ryan's aunt when Bill was basically walking into Cheneth buying the DPV vehicle, those 3-seaters with the 50 caliber on the roof. That was Bill's project.
Oh, wow.
So that's when he met Mike Thomas's sister, and then later became his wife. And then I met Ryan with, "Hey, my uncle's retired, wants to, what do you think about having him train?" Or I should say not train at that point, but be a guide. And I go, "Okay." So met Bill, and kind of intimidating a little bit. And I kind of, "Well, Bill, you realize if a customer kind of goes off the edge and makes you mad, you can't tear their arm off and beat them to death with it.
Right.
Okay? These are customers." And he helped with a lot of projects. I had Bill help me on a good amount of the vehicle development and test trips that we do. And literally, Bill's last day was on that. We just got finished up with a vehicle. Everything's good, switching the battery off, and I hear this, Bill's down. Thought he fell asleep in a chair and fell over. He'd had a heart attack. So had the SEALs on him doing CPR, sent guys up to the fire station to get paramedics, but he didn't make it. But I mean, as devoted as he was, he didn't complain at all that day. And we could see something was off a little bit. And that was his last ride, unfortunately.
Doing what he loved, though.
As corny as that sounds, doing what he loved. And he'd just been down in Mexico with Bud Brutzman, helping down there at the Baja 500, then came up and helped us for 4 more days. And that was it, unfortunately. Yeah. But a great guy. Huge resource, I think, for our country way back through the days. He'd been in every SEAL team there was through time. Some of the stories that he couldn't tell were super interesting.
Yeah.
And but very unique character. Basically a good display of what our military guys are like. And what I always would tear up when we get done with a training trip or something, just saying, I've been able to be a juvenile delinquent and a hoodlum my whole life because of guys like you, because I didn't have the nerve to stand up and get shot at. So this is our chance now, whether it's myself or the guys I work with, of giving back based on our background and the luxury we had of freedom in reality, and doing what we do because there's guys like this that are stuck off in some hole in the middle of nowhere, making sure that we're safe. So it's your hat really has to be off to all of these guys, no matter what part of the military or service they're in, that they make our lives what it is. So
100%. And I think it's interesting. I mean, maybe it happens in other parts of the country, but it's definitely unique in Southern California because we have so much military here. Even if you're not in the military, you're somehow connected to it. I mean, I live next to Pendleton, right? And I have a lot of friends in the military, both active and retired. So, and it's a part of off-road culture. I mean, the original brothers who ran the peninsula were World War II vets, right? And they were a little bored and came back and wanted to do some wild stuff. And here we are 55 years later or whatever. So it's pretty cool. But the other thing is, let's talk about Wide Open, because there was this era of Wide Open where you guys were doing tours, you were doing races, and really brought in probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people into the sport of off-road racing. Yeah. And it was interesting because how it worked was that was still print days. So you'd open up a magazine on the airline and see this little ad like, hey, you want to have this adventure in Baja? And little did you know that was like taking your first hit of crack, right? You're going to have that adventure. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we can race these? And then how many of those guys came into our sport via that portal and, ended up racing different classes all the way up to trophy truck. I mean, Roger Norman came in that way, and he owned
Steve Appleton.
Yeah.
Bad Apple Racing. He was one of our good customers. He and his brother, he ran Micron Technologies.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the little cameras that were in your phone and things like that was him. And he'd bring all his executives down to Mexico once, twice a year. And they'd be up at 6:30 in the morning in the basketball court doing calisthenics because that's what he wanted.
Right.
So yeah, there's a very, very diverse group of people we had through that. And Todd Clement had the blue sky look. It was kind of like, what do you think about that? What do we think about this? And we'd be like, oh, geez. And we'd figure it out. But without people, call it a vision, call it a premonition, whatever, to say, hey, let's do this. And you put it on a piece of paper, you say, these guys are nuts.
Yeah.
But you just work through the details. I mean, working in a foreign country or doing stuff and putting on my wife would basically organize the horsepower ranch parties, up to 800 people. You had to coordinate the fire department, the police department. They'd have machine guns in the back seat of their car. I mean, just crazy things you're trying to do. And then the clientele that we had. And yeah, Todd was very, very, you call it visionary, whatever. Anyhow, it was just a unique opportunity that so many of us were blessed to be able to work with each other just because, hey, what do you want to do this? And a lot of us just met other people and things through that. So it's interesting you bring that up. It's still going under Roger Norman. He owns Wide Open Baja now, and the horsepower ranch is still going, but owned by somebody else. And I don't think it's near what it was in its heyday before the economy tanked in '08.
Well, no, I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, nothing against they're running an operation now, but when you look at the people who are involved in Wide Open, Todd, you, Savage, Earl, and the list goes on and on.
Brian Thomas, who's now running the Polaris factory team.
I know we're missing probably 20 people, but it's funny because I forget about it. And then I remember, I'm having a conversation and it gets referenced. I'm like, oh yeah, you're the alumni from that, right? And it was a really cool thing. And, me being at that point, more of a media guy and a spectator, I remember seeing it and I'm like, these guys are crazy.
So Mitch, why is this bike so drippy?
It's our 23 race bike. We can start up front, work our way to the back. Bones can tell you about the suspension.
The rear shock is one of the most critical parts of the bike.
Pegs with the titanium mounts.
Kashima coating here.
Anti-gravity lightweight battery.
Young's modulus.
Horse and a half.
Works chassis lab.
More tie than a space shuttle.
Really? I might need that repeated.
This thing slaps.
Slaps.
Oh, you should have told me that earlier.
I remember there was one year where you set a record for the amount of vehicles.
20.
Yeah.
Point to point.
20 race vehicles.
120 drivers.
Yeah.
200 and something people. We had Cessna caravans, helicopters, planes, trains, buses, automobiles. I mean, it was, I forget how many, that's before MSATs were the thing. And I think we ended up had like 20 some MSATs for that event, motorhomes. It was just out of control. But the whole thing is you get everybody to the finish. We had, of the 20 entries, 18 were tour cars. One was a Class 10 car. One was actually Roger Norman, Reese Millen, and I think Todd in a trophy truck that ran. Got them all to the finish line. Something that kind of really unique about that was that I think we ran 4 or 5 four-seaters full of the Mexican crew that normally worked there with all the parts and tools, and about every 3 or 4 tour cars that go by, we'd send one of those down course after them. And what the funny thing is, and it's not trying to be disrespectful to the clients, but they think they're really hauling ass. The Mexican guys who'd run all those roads their whole life, they're just back there like falling asleep in the car. God, is this as fast as these guys going to go? Just it's perception because they lived it every day.
Oh, yeah.
And there's such talent in those guys. And that's why we let them run the Baja 500 a few times of just the Mexican staff. And they got like one year, I think it was like 2nd or 3rd in Class 2 or Class 1 or something like that with a tour car. And people are like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Just because they just never stop.
Yeah. No, and all the Mexican guys, I mean, a lot of them I'm still friends with. Like one of my main go-to guys that just did it, a friend of mine bought a trophy truck and, was looking for a navigator. And I said, he's all new to us. And I said, well, I've got this guy, Don, Don Legs, and he's...
Don,
yeah.
yeah, electrician.
Yeah.
Tall guy.
And he knows everything. I go, if I was going to do it, this is the guy I would call. And he's constantly done some work with him, so it's really cool.
Don, you had Miguel Sandoval.
Yeah.
Hector, Jose Asarte, and even you look at this now, one of our guys who we really groomed in the Wide Open Baja days for management, Jose Grijalva. Where's Jose G now?
Yeah.
President of SCORE. So, I mean, we did some good stuff, and it was so much behind the scenes. Oh, what's that little car over there? But there was so much more to it than I think people really realized, whether it was engine development, a lot of the Weddell product, the HV1, which is then morphed into something else, that was based around, I went to the Weddells and said, I'll buy 60 of these.
Right.
But I need a big ring and pinion, just do a little bus box on the back because we don't have to spend the money on that right now. That's fine. I just need a big ring and pinion. And that was the HV1 that's now morphed into other variants and been very successful for them. So there's a lot of stuff. We wore out stuff left like crazy. The industry couldn't keep up with what we would tear up because we put so many miles on the car, whether it was working with Jeff Howe of redoing steering racks or at that time Bill Steen with different parts we developed and then later switched to Fox on the vehicles.
Yeah.
Just so many pieces that I don't think people realize how it really helped behind the scenes somewhat on what products they ended up getting also down the road.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to Savage about it the other day because we have a need in our league for more rental vehicles, right? And, we are debating on whether, the more of those cars should be built.
They're still running.
Yeah.
20 some of them still running.
Yeah, they're
almost
still
30 or something.
Well, they're still running as Wide Open, and then they're still running here as 01.
Correct.
Right. And talk about a really smart, robust platform. But the argument was like, do we build more of those cars or do we just do it in UTVs?
UTVs.
Right?
Just simplified. They're like Dixie cups.
Yeah, but
Just pull them out of the dispenser, use them, and
but it's funny because like even though I'm a huge proponent of UTVs, there's this resistance from mainstream market. They look at it and they're like, yeah, I don't want to get in a little buggy, right? So people still want bigger vehicles. They want trucks, and obviously you don't want to put a rookie in a truck. It's too much. But
no, it's not. Just asking.
Yeah, exactly.
As they go flying off the road up to Mike's Sky Ranch.
Right. You ask anybody, they're like, yeah, I'll take the trophy truck. It's like handing somebody an F-16. But no, that was a really, cool and defining era of off-road racing, and what you guys did with Wide Open was pretty incredible.
It was unique. Todd kind of picked me up out of the dirt in the end of 2000 when we'd shut down the PPI program, and hey, what are you doing? I don't know. He says, want to help me for the 1,000? And it's kind of like, okay. And I'd always looked at some of the limited classes. You watch them finish the Baja 1,000, or you get up in the morning after the race is over, and these people are just straggling in all dirty and beat up, and I think, man, how do they do that? There I was living that life. And I think the most extreme time, it had to have been maybe the 2 or the 1,000. We went all the way down. Anyhow, I just remember I watched the sun come up 3 times. The morning of the race, the next morning, and the following after. It was just nuts. And I'm like, how do you do this?
Well, you guys did it.
We did.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of PPI, let's talk about that, because I mean, that was something that shaped off-road racing culture. Really, it shaped the automotive world as well. Because recently you got inducted into the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame.
That was all lies.
and I was fortunate that I got to produce a video about your career for you. And
I was just mad they cut us so short. It's like, Matt, we got to.
I don't.
All right, make your speech. Your speech was too short. Well, they only wanted to give me 6 minutes altogether. Matt gave me a short. What do you want from me?
Right. Well, I mean, the longer version of it lives online. But what's interesting about it, though, too, is in the process of interviewing some of the people for that, I really realized the value of what you guys did beyond off-road racing, right? Because if you look at it, and I know, this is bias, but when you really look at it and you go, how did Toyota become the biggest car company in the world, the biggest automotive?
We did it. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, really,
we tried to help
they
as much as we could.
They needed America.
Yeah.
And if you remember, because I was a kid, I remember my dad bought a Toyota Corolla, which was a pile of junk, the first version, right? And they were getting just shredded apart, in American media for making this cheap vehicle, right? And they weren't getting very much market foothold. And then along comes the Tacoma, and with the combination of their agency, you guys at PPI, obviously Ivan Stewart is the hero, TRD, and having Toyota, they built a great product and were willing to invest into making it better. That gave them the American market. Had they have not gotten the American market, they would have not gotten the rest of the world. That's the process in which how it works, right? You have to go after the biggest car market in the world, which has always been America, and in order to get the rest of the world. So it's interesting to look at it now and understand the impact and the importance of what you guys achieved at PPI, beyond off-road racing. And off-road racing, and really in the culture of America, it was a very important point. I mean, we're a truck nation, so when you look at even with the recent success of Formula One, what I'm curious to see is in the next few years is looking at the realization that we're a truck nation and not a, performance sedan nation. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting.
The reality there, I mean, we were very blessed to have an opportunity with Toyota back in the late 82. Gentleman had some foresight. Lee Sawyer could see that there was something there. They'd already been racing the Silicas with Dan Gurney in some GTO, I think it was, and there was an opportunity they wanted to go short course racing. Let's see where this goes. Mickey Thompson had quite a history of being a promoter of his different racing opportunities and taking his career and pushing it towards there. So we went upside down like crazy financially and time and people-wise the first few years, but Toyota continued to step up. After our first year with Lee Sawyer, Les Unger was our next motorsport manager, and he was new to it, but he figured out how to support it internally. And Toyota was so small at that time up in Torrance that everybody would get involved. We even had at one point E.O. Giesel, who is the president of Toyota. He came to a race at the Rose Bowl in person. I remember, grabbing him and showing him the cars that we're cutting and grinding on and fixing where one of them got hit in the side, had to add some tubes back in. But we had support from every level. Toyota's still an incredible company, and they're so successful that they've gotten so big that you lose some of those ties. Unfortunately, I mean, they're still a great car company, still do some work with them and consulting. Actually, meeting guys tomorrow. But
it's a big machine.
It's a big machine, yeah. And it moves a lot slower and is very, very careful to not make a mistake. And so the conservatism sometimes slow things down, and that's where in motorsports, we throw sometimes caution to the wind of, hey, I got to make this better. You're only as good as your last race, and there's another one in 3 weeks, so I got to get this fixed. And car companies and things like that are, well, there's, we're working on 2026 right now. It's kind of like, what about today? So it's just a much slower pace, even though it's fast for them because they have to hit all these waypoints, development, safety, R&D, testing. And there's so many sign-offs and checks and balances. But going back to your original point, we were very, very fortunate to have an alliance with Toyota early on, probably one of the longest lasting motorsports programs with the OE. It was 18 years. It's been great.
I mean, what you got to look back at that. I mean, walking around now and see the effect of what you guys did on, modern desert racing culture in particular, and be proud of that.
We are. I mean, you see, there's so many things that have changed. You have the GPS, so now you don't have to have a photographic memory. You don't have to be an Ivan or a Larry Rossler or something like that. That basically just they went and ran it. It's in their head. They read the terrain. What the GPS has done has opened up off-road to a whole new, if you want to call it, clientele, because you can have somebody there watching, just like you can go spend $1 million and anybody could go buy a Mason trophy truck. There's no check and balance to get in. It's not like you had to start off in this small series to go to this to be checked out. I mean, NASCAR, you can't go buy a NASCAR and go race. Can't go buy an IndyCar and F1. You can't go buy an airplane and just go flying. But yet off-road is so unique. Hey, you got money? How fast you want to go? And you can sign into it. And fortunately, the vehicles are pretty safe. And obviously, as we've been talking through some rules and things, I still do a lot of projects with Bill Savage. And when the rules were basically written, which I worked with Cal way back in the 80s, helping make rules, the rules are still in place. Nobody envisioned a 7,000-pound trophy truck on a 2-inch 120 cage. That maxed out at about, once you went over 4,000 pounds, not 5, 6, 7. So that's where you see some of the rules changing. Well, we need to add a little bit more over here and here, kind of up the minimum, so to speak, because these are lethal weapons. And the constructors, all the different individual companies out there, now that you have computer systems and you can do FEAs, finite element analysis of component, you see where its stressors are going to be, it's helped. But yeah, what we did was, we're talking in the era when I was in high school, it was slide rules. There weren't computers.
Right.
We did back before the 286 computer was just, I forget what it was even called. It was like a next to a nothing computer. We had to design our own kinematics software to cycle the rear suspension, which was normally done for short course cars, which normally you just did on a piece of cardboard with some push pins and strings and pencils. Yep, here's where it is. All right, good, do that. So it's completely opened up CAD designs, software programs for where we would make ball joints in what was called a tracer. It was a lathe that would have a little pattern that a little stylus would follow to cut the ball joint taper in the ball. And now it's just CNC. So the advantages that have come now are just crazy. We had to make everything. We made hubs, brake rotor, everything but bearings and seals. Practically everything else we'd make or adapt out of something, where now it's just like, go down to CarTech. I need to go, here's a brake system, here's rotors, here's spindles, here's this, that. Call up this guy, Curry, I need a rear axle, for Ultra 4s, whatever. So it's really opened up by the evolution of off-road between GPS, computers, all that stuff. Now you see what you do when you go to the races. This weekend at Laughlin, there'll be how many UTVs?
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's got to be cool for you to know that, like, you had a part in the development of all this stuff, and like now you see this thriving culture where, even in the era that you guys were dominating, there was far less, truck count, etc.
Yeah, trucks are smaller, but it was a different time. If you look back when Trophy Truck was first pieced together, I think there was 6 full factory involvement programs at that time. And that's what drove the TV program. Our entry fee was $5,000 a vehicle. And people think, $5,000? Well, that's what paid for the television coverage with Sal and Score, because there wasn't the depth there. There weren't the corporate partners. And people always say, well, why does Toyota seem to own so much of this show?
They're paying for it.
Because they stepped up and did the commercials.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. I have to give Toyota so much credit for, they didn't just say, go race. we'd race, and then okay, how do we activate this? How do we promote it? How do we do dealer promotions? So they did print ads, which obviously now you don't have print ads anymore because there aren't magazines and papers. But I mean, they did it. We'd win a race. There'd be in the Wall Street Journal a full page ad for people back east.
I mean, I as a marketing guy, right? I have to give a lot of credit to their agency, Saatchi and Saatchi, right? So because they took what you guys were doing and they just shouted it from a mountain.
They blew it up.
You know,
Yeah.
It was billboards, it was print ads, there was, cutouts of Ivan, in the liquor store. There was the video game, and there was no place that you would look that didn't say Toyota just won the Baja 1000, right?
Was out testing out by El Centro using Fox's facility out there. So we're staying down El Centro. So one night it was all right, burgers and beer. All right, these guys wanted all these craft beers. So the second night we're up there, there's a farmer family brewery 30 minutes from our hotel. Here's an Ivan Stewart video machine with the 3 steering wheels on it.
Yep.
They're still going.
Attention Off-Road Nation. The Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship comes roaring through Parker, Vegas, and Barstow in 2024. It's 3 of the most prestigious and competitive off-road races in the sport. It all starts with the return of the Parker 400 in beautiful Arizona, January 10th through the 14th. Then it's the biggest, baddest, most grueling off-road race on the planet. The BF Goodrich Tires Mint 400 comes roaring back into Sin City, Las Vegas, March 6th through the 10th. And finally, the climactic conclusion of the Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship, the California 300, returns to Barstow, October 2nd through the 6th. Visit unlimitedoffroadracing.com for complete details. The 2024 Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship is here.
My brother we have 2, right? Because, it was an iconic thing of our youth, go to the store with your quarters, right? And go play against your friends. That was revolutionary, right?
Yeah, have 3 little monsters out there feeding quarters. What an ingenious idea.
Oh, yeah, it was beautiful. But I also think it was on point because, I was fortunate that we moved to Southern California. So, like...
Kalamazoo.
From Kalamazoo, right? And it was just like living in a movie because... yeah, you're seeing all this stuff, but then you're going to the races, and there's Ivan, right? And the other thing I want to give you guys credit for is the level at which you operated, a level of professionalism, right? That really changed off-road racing. Like what happened, and it was funny because I was just interviewing the Herps about the Truggy, and they were literally like, hey, we wanted to bring something to the table so that we could look as good and beat, PPI. And it wasn't just Ivan, it was the program, right? It was like you guys became the mark. There was when you lay out the eras of who dominated when, it was like, the McMillans dominated the buggy era. And then, the trucks ended that. And really it was PPI that ended that and ushered in the new era of trophy trucks, right? And even as the factories, exited and trophy trucks got better and better and better. And now you look at it, and I remember, actually, it's a really funny story. So you remember Fluger coming in, and
just talked to him last week. We're still trying to resurrect that first one. Just getting new Savages building new CVs for it right now. Supposed to go testing in a few weeks with it to go run Nora as a 20-year-old car.
Nice. That would be really cool. But when he came in, one of the things he did is he made all of his guys wear uniforms, and it was an updated version. It was, camo cargo pants and, shirts and all this stuff. And I think, yeah, he did a monster sponsorship and they looked like the most professional team out there. And I remember talking to him and he goes, yeah, I want to look as good as what PPI did back in the day. Right. And then everybody emulated him immediately. Cause it was like, oh, you can't show up with a, scrappy t-shirt. Now you gotta have a uniform. Right. And that goes on to this day. We still have waves of it where it's like everybody gets kind of relaxed and a little messy. And then you have 3 or 4 teams who have their stuff really tight. And everybody goes, well, we want to look like them and look pro, I
was talking to somebody last night about that. And I was telling this whole group of different guys at dinner a story. And I said, never underestimate the next person you're going to meet, shake their hand or be introduced to, because you will never know where that path will lead you. And I won't tell the particular story it was, but it was very influential in PPI's life of people, how'd you get into NASCAR? It was just an odd situation that we ended up with the McDonald's program and the Tide program. The two most prominent programs in NASCAR, we ended up, and it was all through performance that we did, but a relationship that got us that opportunity, knowing what we were. Obviously, we stepped into a hornet's nest because NASCAR is kit cars to a certain extent, and it's a whole different format from off-road. But again, just the opportunity of people you meet, whether it was somebody with Coors back in the day, John Rock, or how these different pieces fit together, and then being able to do the BFG tire testing through our Bob Bauer, back when I was a driver in the early 80s. He was my first motorsport manager when BFG first came up with off-road programs. And then Frank D'Angelo, who, bless his soul, he was our truck driver at that point way back when, and look where he moved up to. The guys that just focused and their heart and soul were in it to help progress off-road from BFG to where you had pit support. Where would these guys be without BFG tires and pit support? I'm sure there's a zillion other tire companies now, but how many of them put the effort forth to basically help SCORE, the sanctioning body, put a race on in Mexico and do a lot of the pre-running stuff, because SCORE doesn't always have the money for that.
No.
And I'm sure you go through it yourself.
100%.
You and your brother, all right, load up the ice chest and we got to go mark out Parker. We got to figure this out. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, I've done 2 pre-runs of Parker. I'm doing another one. And, it's not free. It's days of our time, fuel, lot, on and on. But yeah, 100%. I think you're right. It's very interesting, and the BFG pit support program is still to this day unparalleled.
Yeah, and that was basically BFG. How do we get involved in off-road and push? Hey, Bob, you got a new job. Gee, thanks. I got a new job, but I got no support. No, I shouldn't say he had no support. Just, it's not like, hey, here's $100,000, go make this happen.
No.
He trides with us going on all of our pre-runs.
Yeah.
So it's been very unique in how the manufacturers in one form or another have helped this sport grow and see the value. Toyota was one very early on that did. It's unfortunate other automotive manufacturers didn't. You had Walker with Dodge and Chrysler, Ram, Roger Mears with Chevrolet, you had Nissan, you had a lot of Chevrolet with Nelson and Nelson.
Yeah.
But the factories wouldn't put the money in to really support this sport.
Right.
They put it into a team and said, here, go make us some advertising. And Toyota's the only one I can really think of that really grasped onto that and said, we're going to make something out of this.
Yeah, it's funny because that documentary came out a while ago on Michael Jordan. And I
saw that. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was an awesome documentary. But one of the things that it highlighted is the relationship between Nike and their agency, and how their agency made this kind of discovery that they should be, rather than selling a product, they should be presenting the culture, right? And once they did that, everything changed, right? And, of course they had Jordan, right? So that was a key component in the whole thing. Without him, the whole thing wouldn't have worked. But now you've seen Nike go do this in golf and tennis and apply the same thing, like the blueprint's there. And very similar to what
Tiger Woods.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at his reign of how successful he was. And basically that little check mark followed him everywhere.
And then now, but you look at that era of what Saatchi and Saatchi did with the actions that you guys created, right? Because that was the validating point of the brand, the validating point of the truck. That was why you needed especially a mid-sized truck, because even that was all a new thing, right? So when you look at the success of that program and how it shaped America and how it made the Toyota Tacoma the #1 mid-sized truck in the country, like that was a very, very key component in that. And, you had all the right similar elements to what, Nike had with Jordan. You had, Ivan Stewart, the hero, right? The guy, good looking guy, big teeth, blonde hair, buff, he's in shape. I remember looking at him going, yeah, I want to look like him. Right. And then, back when they had trophy girls, right? I'm like, there's even women involved in this. I'm in. Right. And then, they had PPI, which was this program that was way more advanced than anybody else at the time. And then, and also the other thing you guys did is you didn't settle. It wasn't like, okay, cool, we're good, we're in a cruise. It was like, you guys were like, well, let's do a NASCAR program and then let's do an IndyCar program. I believe at one time you guys were running IndyCar, NASCAR, and off-road, right?
A little more than that.
Yeah, exactly. See, I don't even know all the...
2 Atlantic cars program, 2 Indy cars, IndyCar test team, McDonald's, NASCAR, tied NASCAR, ran the off-road program, obviously, and then Toyota's Motorsport Garage. So all the celebrity cars at Long Beach, that was all kind of a program. PPI ran the Motorsport Garage for Toyota. So we'd build 20-some of those identical cars, build their pace cars, oddball, any oddball thing they needed. So yeah, it was looking back at it, we didn't have any idea what it was or what we just, there was so much going on, you just did it. Now you look back and go, that was kind of cool. Or people say, man, that was awesome. It was a blur. It was so much to keep up after it. And people, what about this thing or that thing? We didn't really pay a lot of attention outside our window. We were so busy inside our walls. It wasn't like we were trying to be ultra secretive. There just was no time.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of guys literally out of high school. There's no book. Here, go read this. How to go factory off-road racing. It was just learn as you go. And There was a lot of lightning bolts that would miss you and things like that, but you just did the best you could.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from that era, do you remember a point where you're just like, okay, this is it. This is what it's all about?
I wish I could say that, but it was just, you never thought it would end, but you didn't know where it was going to go.
Right.
So it was kind of a double. You're so busy about what's between here and here, and you still wanted to look out there, but it was just hard to do because there was so much going on. And you got race after race after race. And, at one point in the short course and desert, I think we were like 18 events a year or something like that between MTEG and the desert, and whether it was Score or HDRA or Best of the Desert at those times, Walt Lott when he was still alive.
Yeah.
Just so many moving pieces of it. So you didn't have a chance to sit back and enjoy it. There's a funny song that I remember at the time from Rush, Living in the Limelight. And back when I got to be a driver in those days, before I pulled out of that, was I couldn't go snow skiing. I couldn't go do all these different things because if I got hurt, I couldn't drive the car. So you had to realize the sacrifices, even though it seemed like you had the ultimate opportunity, how many things you had to push aside to drive that race car and not put yourself at risk.
Sure.
And so while it's all these neat things, it's still there. No matter how good it looks on the outside, there's still compromises people make, even to this day in different things, whether it's financial, their time, their resources. They don't watch their kids grow up. There's so much to it that I think people on the outside, as much as they look and go, isn't that wonderful? Everybody's paying a price one way or the other.
Yeah, no, totally. Was there a win, though, that you guys got where it kind of changed everything or just a really special win?
Looking back, part of it might have been the 98 Baja 1000 that we won overall. And that was with the V8, with 015 as we called it. But that was later on in the Toyota program. Probably 93 was a neat one. Won the 1000 overall, beat the motorcycles. And that was the last race for what we called 010. But there was so much going on between MTEG until it ended in the end of 94, and then other projects. Then we were trying to get ramped up for IndyCar. And so couldn't take a breath. So when you say, wasn't this great? Well, yeah, 90 was probably the culmination of a lot of stuff because won the short course championship, the desert championship. Ivan was like Ironman award. Wow. There's a lot of stuff that happened in 90 that was really kind of neat. There's still a thing on the wall in my garage of all the different things. I don't remember all the pieces. Again, unfortunately, I hate to sound ignorant to it, but it was just, again, like I say, it was a blur because as soon as you're done with one thing, you're only as good as your last event. You got to do the next one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be having to write technical reports of, hey, we won the race, isn't this great? If we broke, all right, here's what broke, here's what we're doing to fix it, here's how the test was, and that had to get disseminated all through all Toyota and Toyota management. So you're always like, oh, geez, you're sweating bullets. Like, all right, what's going to happen on this one? I mean, one race we were getting ready for, what was it? It was when Mark Gleckel died at Barstow. Ivan and Walker were racing through the finish area, and they climbed tires, and Gleckel got killed. That was a Fireworks 250. The only reason we ran that race was we ran the Baja 500, washed the car off, and ran it again. Got rear-ended, broke the back of the trans off, had a few problems, still ended up second overall. And the big thing from Toyota was, why didn't you win? It's kind of like, we told you we were only going there to put more miles on the car.
Right.
It's like, you got second? What's wrong with you guys? It was pulling teeth to get the V8 because it was like, that was in 97 we finally got that. So, well, you guys have been winning everything. What do you need a V8 for? It's like, we can go 94 miles an hour downhill with a tailwind. I mean, there was one race that had on TV, on ESPN, Robbie Gordon pulling next to Ivan across the dry lake bed at Prim, and then took off. We're going like 93 and he's going 130.
Right.
It's like, can we please have a V8? And finally, all right, we'll take a look at it. Good, I'll have it there in the morning. Because we already had, the first V8 we had was out of the warranty department. We had all these TMSers that we called them that worked at Toyota that would come out and be pit volunteers.
Right.
And so, was it Reg Melling? Anyhow, he goes, hey, we got a V8 out of a Lexus we got back. You guys want it? I go, yeah, all right. So we went and picked it up. So we literally had it sit at the shop. So when John Koenig, Ivan's birthday was always the 500. So we had like a birthday party down at the hotel at Staro Beach. And he says, we're talking about this. And, oh, well, we'll take a look at it. So had it there the first of the week. They tore it down. It was this, again, a warranty department motor. Larry Slutter, very ingenious. First man, he was general manager at Cosworth. First man to turbocharge a car at Indy. I mean, he would walk through the pits like God. He was the guy. And somehow we got him because he was at TRD and they had bets on this all-aluminum takeout motor of an LS 400 or something like that. And the first time they ran it was like over 530 horsepower out of a 302 cubic inch. So it was pretty doggone good. And then we went right out and 97 500 out of the box, won overall. Had an issue at the 1,000, then won the 500 and the 1,000 the next year. We're only running 2 races a year because we're saving all the money to go to IndyCar at that point. But V8 was probably a really neat time. Even though it was later in the program, it was still neat to be able to have a car that literally you just hit the gas pedal and it went 130 right now.
Yeah.
What else you got for me?
I have millions of questions.
I'll drain you all day.
No, it's cool. So, you had to you were fortunate you got to work with a lot of like remarkable people, but let's talk about Cal for a second. A really interesting guy. People who know him know how intelligent he is and know how driven he is. But the people who don't know him, how would you describe Cal?
Well, people will watch this. I got to be careful. Driven, focused, take no prisoners, and would pour every penny he had back into it from day one to make it better. We all lost sight a little bit along the way because it got so good so fast and you wanted to keep doing more and more and more. But yeah, just focused and driven. I mean, he was basically a full certified, I don't know if he was certified as a nuclear welder, but really a badass welder and good fabricator who literally got thrown into, okay, let's do financial. Let's figure out how to run a company. And I was kind of like the same way. And that's how he and I originally met, as through Harold Day at Dayco. He was the tech director at SCORE and wanted to get into off-road. And I thought had an opportunity with Steve Kelly for an old Class A truck that he bought from a guy and go work on it. I thought, met another guy, Roger Sanderson, and said, well, Harold Day's a friend. He's looking for some tech guys. I thought, well, what better way to crawl through everybody's car and see what they're doing than be a tech guy? So Cal was a tech guy. I was a tech guy. Roger was one. We just literally just whoever it was, Ivan's truck, Walker's truck, whoever's racing it today, you just crawled through every part of their car, see what they were doing. Then you're working on your own thing and just kind of goes forward from there. So just interesting people and opportunities of how you got there. So as far as Cal, yeah, just right from the get-go, he got a flood-damaged Bronco from back in the day and bought it and made it into a race car for himself. And then unfortunately it had a head injury. Car flipped over, head went out the window, got squished. He had to learn how to walk, talk, everything all over again. Just think about the worst case scenario, think about, drooling in their soup. And that was kind of what he was for a while to get back up. So to where he made it from where he had after that crash was remarkable. And so he was just driven. I mean, we could have screaming, yelling matches and laugh and shake hands and hug right afterwards. And people would be like, oh my God, you guys were in a huge, no, we're just discussing things.
Sure. Passionate people.
It's passion. Yeah. So still to this day, he's, CEO of Legacy Racing.
Yeah.
So with one of the owners being Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
And it'll be a Toyota program for 2024.
He's going to have his hands full.
Yeah. So Cal has really been it's funny, I was talking this the other day about acronyms, the Wizard of Oz, the Man Behind the Curtain, or an e-ticket ride at Disneyland. So you have to think about what you say for just old school, because so many of the younger generation they think, what the heck's he talking about?
Yeah.
But if you think about, Cal's been very integral at with TRD, just trying to help with a lot of programs through time. So if you look at Martin Truex Jr.
Right.
with the race program out of Colorado, Furniture Row, Toyota, what do you think drove all that together?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of behind the scenes of really taking his knowledge and helping grow other groups. And so that's kind of where this thing led with Legacy, needed to diversify from Joe Gibbs a little bit. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? Let's put another team in place. So that's where that's, so we used to talk, quite a bit. I left him a voicemail this morning, so he's just, getting fed with a fire hose. He's just gurgling right now, getting that up and going. So yeah, it's just, even you look at it now, it's like, who would imagine your career? Cal's, I think, 2 years younger than I am, a year. So, here you're CEO of this multi-team NASCAR program with a new Toyota sponsor for 2024.
Right.
So you just never know what's going to come out of the burning pile over there of what once happened at PPI, and saying, where'd that guy come from? So there's a lot behind it. So I don't really have a good answer for your question. He's just very unique in a lot of ways, and he and I still work on projects together, behind the scenes, you might say.
Yeah.
Just great friend, brother, basically, from another mother. And heck, I'll be 70 next year. I'm still thinking, in here looking at you, I still feel like I'm in my 20s. And you're looking over and go, who is this old gray-haired guy? Is he going to die on my show here?
Not hardly. I think you're running circles around most of the young people. But yeah, it's funny. So obviously PPI was a defining era of your career, but not nearly the only thing that you've accomplished. And, our mutual friend, Bob Bauer, had said, we're talking about you. And he said, yeah, he goes, I had to call, and I think he talked to you. I think he talked to your wife as well. And, he reassured her that, you are being inducted into the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame, not PPI. All right.
That's a quote.
And, so, PPI ends, right? And then you get involved in Wide Open and all these various projects. And then it comes full circle, and you get inducted into the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame and really recognized. What did that feel like?
I hope I don't choke up on you here. A huge honor and validation from any and all. I think you were sick, weren't able to make it there. I had guys from high school days that used to help me at night on the weekends working on the Class 8 that Steve and I would go race. and then helped later on. One guy, Randy Salmont, he was able to get involved with Michael Nesmith when he went racing, and then David Westham, guys who just grown out from those areas. But yeah, having close to 70 close friends that were there, plus just as simple things to the guys in the military that I work with. Oh, is this the Hall of Famer? You're going to start charging us more now? So I kind of chuckle, but it is a true honor to be in the same circle with so many other people, whether it was from Walker to Parnelli Jones to Bill Strop. It's just that whole list of characters is kind of a blur. And it was, I think you mentioned that, and you were very helpful putting together a video for me. And I was unfair to you, dumping like my whole life of stuff. It's like, all right, Matt, can you give me 6 minutes out of this? And you're kind of thinking, no, it's hard, and it's so difficult to take pieces of your life and say, how do you explain 50 some years in 6 minutes?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can gloss over it, but it's actually really fun for me because, I have hugely respect you and respect the people that built this culture, right? Like, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for you guys. And, we're taking risk, but, a lot of what we're doing is just redoing things that have already been accomplished by you, by Sal, by Cal, by Mickey Thompson. It's like people say stuff to me and I'm like, don't you remember Mickey Thompson did that already?
It's not known. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
It just goes, just like, our parents had their thing, and before that, and we all want to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
And it's just difficult.
But I think that's why it's so important. That's why the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame is so important, is that, like your career as an example of it, is it wasn't one thing continuously. It was lots of different things, and over the course of 50 years that had an impact. Because when you talk to people about, when somebody goes, oh, Tommy Morris, you could see they smile, like, oh, Tommy, like, so the effect that you had on people and the effect that you had on the culture, that's one little validation for it as being inducted. And I'm really glad that they finally did it for you. Right. But, that's one of those things, like, I really enjoy seeing people get the credit that they're due.
No, thank you. And it wouldn't be, as I tried to mention in the induction, when I kind of grabbed the medal and kind of held it up and just said, all of you are part of this, because without the fans, the kids, the children, the people that followed what happened, even though they might not know who I was or whatnot, they're still a part of the sport, and the sport has grown. So whether it was guys who I met in the very beginning, Steve Kelly, who I met through Bob Clark, who I went through high school with. Bob had a transmission shop, BC Engineering. Hey, you want to go to the Parker 400 back in the early 70s or something like that? And then, hey, do you want to chase the Baja, in 70-something or other for some bikes? Hey, you want to do this? People you meet. I would be nowhere and nobody without, as I said, the people you meet again, or just shake their hand and here's this door that opens and that door that opens. Whether it was pre-PPI with Steve Kelly and Steve Orth, Terry Householder. Terry and I worked together with Steve Orth for Steve Kelly down in Long Beach. Steve had a building down there. We had a wheel company, United Industries. Here's a Class 1 car and here's a Class 8. Hey, I can't afford to pay you, but I'll pay all the bills on the Class 8, and we'll at least split the driving, or depending on who's where, you drive the whole thing and I'll be in my Class 1 car. Such unique opportunities that just through meeting him and chasing for him at a Baja 1000, that I was introduced to him through a friend of mine, Bob Clark, I went to high school with. You can't make these things up.
Right.
And that just expanded through my whole life. Meeting Cal, come do this. Hey, you want to come race a factory Toyota? After we'd already done some Class 8 stuff, building a car and whatnot. And then Ted Mangels, incredible gentleman, was good. If you look at the legacy of off-road, from Drino Miller to Vic Wilson to Bruce Myers, Ted Mangels is right in the gang of those boating guys down in Newport that made all that stuff happen way back when.
Yeah.
In the first Baja 1000 type of thing. So I guess I was blessed in that my parents were quite a bit older when I was born. So I was used to seeing a gray-haired dad. So Ted Mangles was an older man with a gray hair. So I guess I don't know where it came from if I leaned towards the elders to learn what they'd done, because they already messed up a lot of stuff before they made good stuff.
Right.
And that's why I tell other people, it's not the brainiest guys, just hung out with a lot of smart people, and we wrecked a lot of stuff. The first 4 factory Toyotas we built in '84, we're going to really be smart. We're going to build 4 at the same time. We got to have them done within a year. We'll do it all at the same time. Well, that was 4 vehicles plus spares in a dumpster when we made a mistake versus making one and proof it all out. So you learn on these things. But yeah, just incredible. From Al Bodie, who I worked with, he now works at, he's been working it through IndyCar, different places. He's at Chip Ganassi Racing. So he's an engineer on the Extreme E program, where one of my ex-Navy SEAL buddies, Dave Birkenfield, I introduced him to Chip Ganassi when we were out testing years and years ago. He's the team manager for Extreme E. So he got me involved with Extreme E to help fix some issues with their Extreme E car for their series. And I said, well, I'm a hammer and nails guy. I need this other guy. So I grabbed Bill Savage. So he'll help fix some things on the Extreme E car, worked out a deal where Fox would be their sponsor to get him some better suspension versus what they had. And then Bill and I have been working from the ground till it just tested last week, the new Extreme E H car that's hydrogen electric. So, I mean, to be able to have your fingers in all these pieces and working with the CEO or COO at Extreme E to try and help them do a good car, because it wasn't what they thought. And these are in front of world athletes. So now I was just at Fox the last couple of days where their guys are just getting back from Europe, because now Fox is still the, quote, premier supplier of shock parts. So that put them on a world stage outside of just our small culture, working with Bobby Smith and Brian Harold, say, this is a good program for you in Extreme E. Quit with this European stuff. You need to go this direction.
Yeah.
I learned about internal and external bypass.
Yeah.
And it's just developing the car, because it was never supposed to be what it was going to be. So just unique opportunity. Again, you never know who you're going to meet.
No, it's funny. And yeah, that instance in particular is one that, like, I'm personally really stoked on, because that is the effect of John Marking still, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Racing against your dad is something that 90% of the racers in the world will never get.
I've accomplished everything I wanted to do, and now he's just like taking the reins. I want to be remembered for being a huge part of short course, not just racing, keeping it alive, helping it grow. If it comes down to the last weekend and I'm in it, the boys better watch out.
And right down to the point of working with their guys. So one of the main managers at Ganassi was an off-road way back when, Mike Hall. So my friend Earl, Desiderio, when they were going through picking their male and female, Sarah was, Earl pushed the Sarah part and I pushed the Kyle part.
Right.
And RJ was my second pick.
Sure.
But I said, for right now, if you got to put a guy in a rocket and light a fuse, I'd put Kyle in it.
Sure.
And they didn't work out as everything as it should have. A lot of little things, and they've changed the driver lineup for this year, which is good. Had a little bit of a part of comments on RJ and on Sorensen. She's a good, talented gal.
Yeah.
But again, it's just an odd series. You don't get to gel together very often, because you just 4 times a year that you mail off to a foreign country, don't get a lot of practice time, and then you can be a hero zero and nothing.
Well, I also think there's a massive cultural difference in how we race, and we race in the idea of the individual, whereas Europeans are very team oriented, right? And so it's like, especially if you have multiple race vehicles and they're giving team orders like, hey, you pull over, or you draft, or this is the plan is for Bob to win and for Fred to be second, right? And that's part of the heritage of, of all racing, but much more in the European aspect, where in America, it's all for one, right? And
who has the pocketbook many times.
Yeah, but also, like, it's, like watching it happen of, like, when our guys go over there, whether it's a female or a male, they have one objective, and it's to be first place, not to have 3 seconds and whatever the plan is for the team. So I think it's a hard cultural adjustment, because I've watched the same thing happen in Dakar where guys are being told to hold off on stages, and they're like, why? You know what I mean? Like that.
Like it's a chess game.
Yeah, like that benefits somebody, but it doesn't benefit me, the driver, at that point. But it's just, I think it's just a different. It's just a different culture, and the extreme E thing's been really interesting. I'm glad that Ganassi jumped in. I'm glad that we've had some of our American drivers able to have some opportunities over there, because I think it's shown the talent level. I think it's also shown that we don't have very much patience, but I still think it's really cool.
It was a shame that Kyle LeDuc went under some health issues, had to back out early in the last season, and then I was amazed how quickly he passed away.
Yeah.
I guess we're just so removed since he's back east and not around all the time. So,
well, it is actually pretty rough. I mean, he had a pretty difficult form of cancer. Unfortunately, I've lost a handful of friends with cancer. I know quite a bit about it. And, but he was fighting it as best he can. And, I think it was like the day before he passed, he was text messaging me, because he was like, "Hey, I'm coming to SEMA." And the whole time I'm like, I don't want to discourage you, but I don't think that's a good idea, because, when you're taking all the damage to your body that the cancer drugs and radiation cause, you're in a very prone stage, and traveling may not have been the best, the best thing to do at that time. And so, yeah, I mean, cancer sucks. I mean, I lost my mom to cancer. I've lost some of my best friends to cancer, and it's sad, because Kyle still had a lot more to do, right? And but that being said, it's like I realized this with my mom. They're not gone. They're still here in us, right? And what we do and how we carry them forward. And I think that'll be true with Kyle and his effect on our culture. We're not going to let anybody forget about who he was, right? So, but yeah, it was a huge opportunity, and it would have been nice to see him do more there on that stage. And him and I were going back and forth about him transitioning over and doing more desert racing as well, as something that was high on his list. And he was looking for the opportunity to do that.
it was unfortunate. He had so many mechanical issues that last year, and just everything unfortunately ended on the song it did. And I don't think none of us were really thinking about it or expecting it. Just let you realize how fragile life is.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. In that, it's like, you look at your whole, I guess, your whole ride in off-road culture, right? Like, did you think we would make it this far and make it to what the car counts? And yeah, we were talking earlier about, some of the messes that are going on right now in short course and Ultra 4 and things like this. But like, then some fragmentation in desert racing, but also like, you got to recognize the health of it. I mean, here we are in this terrible, we've gone through COVID, and the effects of the economy due to COVID and funding wars and whatever it is, right? And we still have high car counts, in some cases higher car counts than we've ever had before.
Well, especially, I mean, obviously you have your own series and there's other series, so you might think, well, look at how few race cars were at this event or who was there. But if you take it collectively, there's a lot of cars running. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so, yes, it is still relatively healthy. I wish there was more corporate sponsorship or the means to it. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's all gone to social media of how many tweets or, hey, I got this. How many do you have of that? And that checks the box versus, oh, you go race and you're going to be on TV. Well, what's the viewership of that versus you're a Kardashian? You've got Kardashian's the perfect example of creating something from nothing.
Sure.
And You got to have your hat off to that family and mom of what they've done, like it or don't, but they're a marketing dynamo.
Sure.
And us in off-road, we're basically somewhat retarded. We don't we don't understand that as well as we should. Find a 5-year-old to do your tweets for you. Do something because, well, I just want to race. It's like, yeah, but who knows about it?
Right.
And unless you've got a social following or somebody doing it, nobody knows. We do in our own culture, but we're our own little inbred group almost.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think there's two parts to that. One is I think that the bullshit fake social media influencer stuff is failing. There's those numbers are declining and people are looking at the Dan Blazerians and they're like, yeah, this is bullshit. And so they're looking to other things, right? And then the other part of it is like, if you look at the backlash of what happened during COVID and how off-road won, which was everybody wanted to get out, but they sure didn't want to go hiking, right? They wanted to get into a motorized vehicle. So what happened is we sold a ton of UTVs, overland vehicles, Raptors, everything, right? So that was a huge gift, and I also think that, everything is, like you said before, cyclical, right? Like, okay, you have this, influencer marketing thing that's going on, and now that's changing. Now people are looking for the real thing, real relationships and real connections because the fake stuff doesn't feel that good anymore. After, so many adrenaline dumps or whatever, so many clicks, you're like, well, actually, going outside and getting dirty and not having to look at my phone every few seconds feels a lot better. So we'll see. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, I think what we're doing in off-road racing is really important for kids, because I see these baby savages that we're raising that are coming up.
Bill Savage.
No. Yeah. We can only handle one bill at a time, right? But, these kids that are coming up who are just badasses and, starting to see the first wave of those guys in Dakar and other forms of motorsports, competing and just, absolutely trouncing guys, twice their age because they started racing at 6. We've never had that before.
Look at the NASCAR up and comings, whether it's the Sheldon Creed or the Zane Smith or the Riley Herbst. I mean, you're thinking these kids were at the Lucas or the Core race in a trophy car just going, that's a 450 engine. Look at what the heck's that kid doing?
Yeah.
And they just learned car control so early on. I wish there was the way to support their talents in off-road, but they got to go where they got to go.
Yeah, I think that'll come, though. I mean, I think that's our challenge, right?
Yeah.
Is that, we're here to make that path, right? Because I don't want Sheldon Creed going to NASCAR. I want him to stay here, and I want him to be able to make money. I want, AJ Jones. I want Seth Quintero. I want, Mitch Guthrie Jr. Like, I don't want those guys to go to IndyCar, F1, whatever it is, right? I want them to stay here and have a long career here, showcasing their skill set, because having those young people attracts more young people. It's like, this is one thing we learned with X Games, right? Is that, we already had skate, surf, snow, BMX culture. They're all separated, right? But they were all fine. Were they making a bunch of money? No, because it wasn't really well organized, and that was never really the point. But along comes ESPN and throws everything together in X Games, and it completely changed the game. And what everybody likes to forget is those first few years of X Games that were like a mess. It was like they had, ice climbing and downhill, trash can racing and whatever they could throw together. And eventually the stuff that was bullshit got fleshed out, and it gelled with things that were backed by a culture, right? And so I see the same thing happening with off-road racing where, we've gone through all these challenges, and now we're at a point where we have so many things that are helping us momentum-wise. We beat the bad economy. We've, UTVs have come in, youth racing, lots of different vehicle technologies are more accessible. The land closure thing, it's happening a little bit in certain areas. Like we're having some challenges in Moab, but as we flip the script to it being a conversation about economics and not about like, hey, help us with our club race or our club ride. It's like, no, look, how many billions of dollars do you want to turn away from your economy by closing down these trails? Because that's what it is, right? So now, like, if you look at like what we just did with having the California 300, everybody's like, you can't have a major off-road race in Southern California anymore. And what did we do? We're like, hold my beer, because we can, right? And we must, because this is where the culture's from. You can't have, Indy without having the Indy 500, in Indianapolis Speedway.
Yeah.
So what's our Indianapolis Speedway? Well, we all go test there and don't recognize it. It's Barstow, So I have a lot of hope for the future, and I also look at the history and the lessons that you guys taught us, right? And I go, look, they already figured it out. We just have to update that for what we're doing now. And the factories, they'll come, right? I have no doubt because of how important the truck market is,
Big money.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was thinking about this. I know there's things you're interested in, maybe my past or my career, and then I almost want to flip the table and say, okay, so you've interviewed a lot of cast of characters like myself. Just saw Johnny Campbell as I was leaving. So you start seeing the opposite side of the table. You're there, but as you look at all the different people you have come through, what's a common denominator?
Yeah.
Land use.
Yeah. Land use. There's other ones too.
Yeah, but that land use, financial land use and pieces like that.
Yeah.
And as you say, whether it's Barstow or other areas, it's okay. I made a little bit of thing at the Hall of Fame. Join the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Join Corvette. Join some land use advocacy, because basically the people that are against us, they're organized.
Yes,
they got nothing else to do. We got fuel to burn and desert to go ride on.
Yeah.
They don't, so they're trying to close us down. So I just try to encourage people, whether it's Corva,
Orba is a big one too. They do a lot to protect us.
Orba, the Sand Sport, whatever you're into, Sand Sports.
ASA, yeah.
What's the one that's out of Colorado?
Corva? No.
No,
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
brain bad for me. Anyhow, something that your number is counted. You know, being a member of SCORE doesn't do it. Being a member here doesn't do it. It's something that
tread lightly is
tread lightly. Yeah. That's another one. Yes. So anyhow, didn't mean to beat that banner, but just how do people make it better? Because we can talk about it all day long, but somebody's got to get off the. It's like going out and voting. Got to get out and get your voice heard.
Well, if you have an off-road business, you should be a member of Orba. Number one, if you're a recreational enthusiast, you should belong to Tread Lightly. You know, they're going out and keeping our lands open. And if you don't want to belong to any of those, that's fine. Come clean up trash with us at one of our trash cleanups. But yeah, I agree. But I also look at it's funny because, you know, F1 just proved that anything is possible. I mean, when you think about the idea that they just shut the strip down for, you know, a race, it's incredible. I mean,
$500 million investment.
Well, that was just on the facility.
Yeah, just to put it together.
But I saw the economics of it as a post report. And so what people have to understand is the two biggest events in America this year were the Indy 500 and the F1 race in Vegas.
Was it?
And the F1 race in Vegas made roughly 4 times the impact that they expect the Super Bowl to make, right? So when you talk about scale, right, and you talk about possibilities and even the things that have already been achieved in our sport that people forgot that Mickey Thompson raced downtown Tokyo long before F1. They forgot that Mickey Thompson packed stadiums all over the country in Canada, South America, all over, right? They've already done it. So can we do it again? 100% we could do it again. You know, and it's just about being organized and flexing our economic power and saying, hey, this is what we want. And if you don't give us what we want, we're going to take our money somewhere else and vote with our dollar and other places, you know?
1990, Desert Storm, Anaheim Stadium, 68,000 people, full house. I was standing down in the tunnel as the Grand National Sport trucks right on the track getting ready for opening ceremonies. I was about 40 feet back from the military guard walking out. just tears in my eyes of everyone had, their lighters up. 68,000 people. It was insane. And now what do you look at it? They ripped out 20,000 seats, so they only have 48,000, so it looks full. But if you look back at that period of time and the culture, whether you had races down in San Diego, still is more of a Southern California, West Coast culture. Mickey would make money out here that would cover what he lost when he moved back east, but just understanding what that was. And obviously now the availability of stuff to keep you busy, like your phone and all these things and social things, people are a little bit distracted, but I sure hope they do come around, because something about having the dirt, the dust, the noise right in your face that you're feeling, you're seeing, you're never going to repeat that watching it's on a phone or something else, or what's happening in Hollywood. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, and that's our power, right? And I think as more people learn about it, the more success we're going to have. And really, when you look at it as a math equation, to me, it's very simple. We are a fraction of sports, right? Motorsports is. And then off-road is a fraction of motorsports. So really our job is to expose it to new people and show how, show how awesome it is, because you can look at it any way you want to, and it's awesome. It's probably the least expensive thing you can do with your family for the weekend. Incredible visceral experience, right? Visual too. I was trying to mix two words.
I was kind of catching the vocabulary there.
And, like there isn't anything like it in the world. And it was funny. Yesterday, Sal called me and he was just checking in, and, he was pretty excited. And I said, I knew he was in La Paz for the start of the 1,000. I said, how was the start of the 1,000? He said, Matt, it was incredible. There was hundreds of thousands of spectators between the start in La Paz all the way to the beach. And he goes, people out barbecuing, having a good time, and it was interesting because I said, that must have felt really good to you knowing that you built it. And he laughed, and, he said, well, it's now it's somebody else running it. I go, yeah, but those people, they were made fans years ago. Right. And they
didn't just start yesterday.
No, and they were waiting for that to happen. And hats off to Score that they had the balls to do this race backwards, because every way you look at it, it's a bad math equation for business, but they did it. And, it went down in history as one of the most difficult one of the most difficult Baja 1000s ever, but I also think it gave the people of lower of Southern Baja, a nice nod to go, hey, we know you're there. Mm-hmm. We miss you guys. We want to come see you guys. And there's a large fan base there and still growing. It's still an area of Baja that's growing quite a bit with the influx of tourism in Cabo and La Paz. So he was pretty pumped. He's like, there's nothing like, 1,000 horsepower vehicle going by you off road. You know what I mean? So, that's the beauty of what we do is once we get somebody there, it's undeniable. It's like, I love doing that and sitting back and going like, it's like watching the needle get pushed in. Right. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, so how do we get involved? And you're like, we got you.
Yeah, it was interesting. All of us have loved pre-running in our life sometime, but watching the drone footage of, I'm not sure it was up by Loretto or somewhere, that pretty much a good part of the drone coverage the first day was this trail that came into like 8 trails was just all silt. And just watching the trophy trucks barely make it through. And I know everyone loves pre-running, but look how it messed that up.
Yeah.
How do the other classes get through there?
Yeah. Oh, it's gnarly for sure.
But what else you got on your list that I can help you with? Or no, we've kind of got sidetracked 5 times. I'll come back some other time if you want.
Yeah, no, we definitely
for more deep down. What's the secret?
Exactly.
How much was your budget?
Exactly. It's like the secrets from Uncle Tommy. No, that's good, man. I mean, that's a good start. I mean, we'll definitely have to come back and do some more. I really appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to spending more time in the dirt with you.
No, it's a thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Monster. We appreciate that. Mitch Covington, Dave Gallen, all the guys there, old off-road dirt guys.
Definitely.
That's all good.
Right on.
Matt, thank you.
Thank you.